On, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we are getting closer and closer to the college football season. As this is being recorded, about 8.5 weeks away from the start of college football season, we are getting out to you guys previews left and right. They aren't really title previews because they are early. We talked about Ohio State, we talked about Texas, we talked about Oregon, we talked about Penn State, and all a bunch of dedicated episodes. And we talked about a lot of big schools in some segments as well this offseason. But today we are talking about Alabama in its own episode. And we are talking about why this season is so important for them and why they have to secure a college football playoff spot. So we're going to get right into it. My thoughts on this Alabama roster. And again, why this program is on the hot seat, probably more than any other program in the country, pretty much. So let's get into it now. Everybody knows how the season went last year. Alabama didn't make the new 12-team college football playoffs, which was absolutely insane. We're talking about a program over the last 10, 15 years that was a shoo-in for a 14 playoffs. Now, Saban leaves with the change of coaching. They don't make a 12-team college football playoffs. And if anybody knows me, I am a guy that really does like Kalen DeBoer. And I feel like Kalen DeBoer is getting a little too much flack at the end of last year. Again, he definitely deserves a little bit of hate. I mean, we're talking about an Alabama team on their schedule that lost games they should have flat out not lost. But I didn't think this Alabama team was one of the better Alabama teams in the decade. I actually thought it was one of the worst teams in the decade, if not the worst. I was not high on Jalen Milroe at all. And I think it was a tough transition for Kalen DeBoer. First off, for Kalen DeBoer to come to Alabama, there was a lot of people that transferred out of Alabama when he came in. Yeah, he was able to bring some pieces from Washington in, but at the same time, most of Washington's really elite talent left for the NFL draft. So he lost a lot of people that were already committed to Alabama, committed to Nick Saban, and then he wasn't really bringing that much in as well. But I think the biggest thing why I don't fault Kalen DeBoer at all, not at all, but as much as other people do, is because of Jalen Milroe. I was not high on Jalen Milroe the whole entire season. I get it. He's one of the most electrifying quarterbacks in college football last year. As a runner at the quarterback position, you could argue the best athlete last year. But at the same time, we're talking about a guy that's so inconsistent in the passing game. We saw his performances, especially when they lost, the inconsistency of play from him. And again, consistent every down, regular type, short and intermediate throws. This guy was one of the worst in power for play. And for the people around this offense, it was very hard for these receivers to stay consistent and get consistent production. They were frustrated. We heard a clip from somebody this offseason saying if Jalen Moore would have stayed another year at Alabama, that a lot of these people would have transferred out. And I completely understand it. It's very tough playing with a rush first quarterback in general when you're a big name receiver, or if you're a college football receiver trying to make a name for the NFL. But to try to get consistent amount of passing, consistent amount of work from somebody who's short intermediate game is very weak and who is turnover prone. Again, I don't fault Kalen DeBoer that much, especially coming from Washington, where he made a national championship with a guy like Michael Penix, who was the complete opposite of Jalen Milroe. When you talk about Michael Penix, a guy that stands in the pocket, a true pocket passer that throws absolute darts, and he had probably the best accuracy in college football his last year. So completely different offense, and combine that with the turnover, combine that with a first-year coach. Again, he deserves hate. We're going to go over it, the games they lost that they should have won. But at the same time, I don't think he deserves as much hate as he's getting. But to sum that all up, this year is going to be a very monumental year for Kalen DeBoer because you cannot go 2 years straight in a new college football playoff format not making the playoffs. So last year, like I said, they lost games they just flat out shouldn't have lost. We thought Alabama was going to be on the complete rise with Kalen DeBoer coming into week 4 because they were 3-0 in that week. They didn't really play that much competition, but they played Georgia and have the best game of the year against Georgia. You're talking about Ryan Williams, who absolutely exploded on the college football scene as a 17-year-old, the best player in that game, making play after play, game-winning touchdown on 2 spin moves. Absolutely ridiculous. Jalen Miller had his best game in the season, I think, by far as well against Georgia. And you're talking about a team that had their best game against Georgia, fought adversity that whole game, and you're figuring, hey, if they could beat Georgia, who at that time was, I believe, the number 2 team in the country, and they exploded on them, Alabama might be good with Kalen DeBoer. But again, anybody who watches me and watches this channel knows a very famous quote I say, especially when it comes to betting segments on this channel. You can't look at last week when taking a line for the upcoming week. And like I said, Alabama came off their best game of the season against Georgia, and they lose the one real game they shouldn't have lost against Vanderbilt 40-35 the week after that. That's why we tell you guys, you can't look at last week when you were betting. You got to look at the team as a whole because you will get trapped. They had their biggest win and then their biggest upset back-to-back weeks. And then South Carolina they beat in a close game. Wasn't an impressive win because South Carolina was better than people thought last year. Tennessee they did lose against Nico Iamaleava. Nico Iamaleava, again, he did what he had to do to win that game, but we expected more from Nico Iamaleava last year. A game they definitely could have won. Then you look at Oklahoma, they lose 24-3. I don't even know how this happened. Like, I literally don't even know how this happened. Oklahoma wasn't good last year in the SEC, wasn't as good as an Oklahoma team as we thought, and they weren't even competitive in that game. And then we look at Michigan, they lose 19-13. Not the craziest shot because Michigan put up a good defensive game against Ohio State, who was a national championship, was national champions. But again, you're talking about a game that's a double-digit spread. You're talking about an Alabama team that was way more talented than Michigan last year. So, again, you're talking about an Alabama team that had 3 losses. I guess you could count the bowl game as 4, but 3 losses when they should have been in the college football playoffs last year, and now they are on a tremendous hot seat, in my opinion. Kalen DeBoer is on a tremendous hot seat. But I'm going to talk about why this Alabama team now could definitely make the playoffs, why I think they are going to make the playoffs, and I think this just overall offense and fit is way better for Kalen DeBoer. So let's get into it now. Again, Alabama is really going to have to win games that they should be winning. In the SEC, you really can't afford an unexpected loss like last year against Vanderbilt because your schedule is hard enough. But now going into this Alabama depth chart, I really like what Alabama did in the offseason. Like, Alabama, I feel like, really retained most of their major parts in an offseason where there was question marks. Like I said, this was an Alabama team that did not make the college football playoffs. This is an Alabama team people are starting to look at differently. I mean, we talked about this quote with Thomas Castellanos. A bunch of other people have quoted on it. This team without Nick Saban in a new college football era with transfer portal, with NIL, with big programs more spread out evenly, they are looked at a little differently. And I think this is a big year for them to get on track. Now, like I said, I love everything they did this offseason because they were able to retain their talent, which was a question mark. But going into it, one of the biggest transfers I like for Alabama was Isaiah Horton. It was very hard to get production outside of Ryan Williams on this Alabama offense. Isaiah Horton was a guy that not only is he an upperclassman, but he was on a very explosive Miami offense last year where I think you're getting in a veteran that's been on a big offense. Again, he only put up 500 yards. This is a guy physically that's a little different than everybody else in his receiver room. He's 6'4". He's a big physical receiver. And like I said, I love the offense he's coming out of going in here. And I think it was important to get more experience around Ryan Williams. Going along with that, they were able to retain Jeremy Bernard. Jeremy Bernard quietly, I think, had a very good season in this Jalen Miller run offense where there wasn't that much opportunity, especially being the second receiver to Ryan Williams. This was a guy that had nearly 800 yards. I think that's decent enough production. And again, you're talking about a senior upperclassman that I think could make the next step into a 1,000-yard catching season with a different system, with a different style quarterback. And then obviously Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams, I believe, has a lot of pressure coming into this college football season because there's a lot of noise around Ryan Williams, and I completely don't understand it. A lot of people think Ryan Williams is overrated. A lot of people think Ryan Williams, again, he had the one big game against Georgia, and now people think he's a top 5 player in the country. This was a guy that was a 17-year-old, and I don't think the offense was really predicated to the best of his abilities. Like I said, with an inconsistent passer, the ceiling was kind of capped for Ryan Williams. And without a big second receiver on the other side of him, it was kind of cat for him. He wasn't the most ideal offense. I get it, he's at Alabama, but it wasn't the most ideal year for him. But this guy, 17 years old, the best player on his Alabama Crimson Tide team last year, in my opinion, the most talented player. Like, come on. Let's not overthink this. We have never seen anything like this. This guy's not overrated. He's going to absolutely explode in this offense. He's going to be head to head with Jeremiah Smith as the best receiver in the country. I don't want to hear any overrated stuff. And going into the quarterback battle, we have talked about this quarterback battle time and time again. And this is the main reason why I think this Alabama team is going to be better under Kalen DeBoer. So the three quarterbacks in this quarterback competition, Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, Keelan Russell. Now, I do really believe it's going to be Ty Simpson and it can't be anybody else. Ty Simpson, not only was he a 5-star guy where Austin Mack is a 4-star guy, he also has another year of experience than Austin Mack. So I think it's a no-brainer there. And I just don't think they could go with Keelan Russell yet. I think Keelan Russell is the future of this Alabama program. When you look at top blue chip talent and just top upside, Keelan Russell is that. But I don't think you're putting in a true freshman when you have a former 5-star in Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson, a guy very oddly quoted that he may not even start for Alabama. He may start his senior year when he first came to Alabama. And now he's starting as a junior. The interesting thing is this quarterback battle, again, I think it's clearly Ty Simpson's to start out, but it could be close if Ty Simpson is struggling. It's going to be interesting to see how Ty Simpson gets off in this season. But if Ty Simpson is the starter, I really like it for Kalen DeBoer because, again, you're going to a pocket passer. But not only that, we just mentioned the wide receiver room around him. You got two wide receivers with experience like Kalen DeBoer did have at Washington. And then you have Ryan Williams, who's an absolute star, who I think is going to be one of the best receivers in the country, if not the best receiver in the country, very similar to what he had in Rome Odunze. So I think you're shaping up a very similar offense for Kalen DeBoer, similar to when he had success at Washington. And I think this is exactly what he needed. I think when he came in, coming from Washington to Jalen Milroe, again, it was an opportunity he couldn't pass up being the coach at Alabama. But at the same time, he couldn't really make changes. Jalen Milroe was an NFL guy. And again, he wasn't really used to a type of system like that. But I believe this system right now and this offense is the perfect offense for Kalen DeBoer to succeed as the Alabama head coach. It's going to be very interesting to see how Ty Simpson comes in, but I do think he will do well. And then Jam Miller will be their running back. They have a couple of other sophomores behind him, but Jam Miller is another guy that I have been high on. Hasn't really shown it yet, but I think Jam Miller as a senior can explode. It's going to be interesting to see if they get anything else out of this running back room. The one big loss I feel like Alabama had this year was with Justin Haynes. He goes over to Michigan. I think that's a big loss for them, but I think it's a good move for him. When you look at Michigan, they have been producing running backs left and right in the NFL. Their rushing offense has been great the last 5 years. I think he's going to do great. It would have been awesome to have two upperclassmen as their running backs splitting a backfield, but now it's really going to be all on Jam Miller. And I understand it for Justin Haynes as well. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was behind Jam Miller. I mean, they got similar production, but Jam Miller was the lead back last year, and he wanted a bigger opportunity. And the rushing offense at Michigan still going to a big program. I think it was a good move for him. Now, we get into the defense. They retained everything on defense. I think this defense is going to be ready to go week one on. When you look at this defense, they do have stars. LT Overton, I think, is arguably the best player on Alabama. I said Ryan Williams is the most talented. LT Overton is right there with him. I think LT Overton is an absolute stud on the edge. He's going to cause average. He's going to cause havoc for the pass rush. And then Justin Jefferson as well as a middle linebacker. He's going to be the leader of this defense. When you talk about a linebacker, has arguably the most pivotal role on a defense. But not only that, a combo linebacker that also rushes the passer, could play the edge. They retain these two guys for the pass rush. I think they're going to lead the pass rush. And then when we look at the secondary should be really good as well. Domani Jackson, a guy I really like at cornerback. I think he's a lockdown corner. And Zabian Brown as well. Zabian Brown, a guy that I think was very impressive as a freshman, along with Ryan Williams as a true freshman. Zabian Brown gets a little overlooked by Ryan Williams, but I thought he had a phenomenal season. When you looked at last year in the Georgia game, he came up with the big pick to seal the game, along with the Ryan Williams touchdown. So this defense, I think, really retained the guys they need to retain, and they definitely do have very good players around them, as Deontay Lawson, Ray Hubbard, Keen Sapp. Like, they have good players around them as well. I expect this defense to be roaring out the gate. The offense, again, I really like the offense as well for Kalen DeBoer, because it really reminds me of his offense at Washington. When you look at the receivers that they have around Ty Simpson, when you look at Ty Simpson as a quarterback, a lot closer to his system at Washington than Jalen Miller was. I really like this Alabama team, and there is no reason why they shouldn't make the college football playoffs. Now we're going to get over the schedule and talk about the schedule a little bit for Alabama. I feel like Alabama had a very eerie, similar schedule to last year. They opened up against Florida State. I talked about this game against Florida State. I think they are absolutely going to dog walk Florida State. I think Thomas Castellanos really lit a fire under them. And again, I think for a team that has more to prove than almost anybody in the country, week one, they're going to dominate Florida State. That spread is 13. I believe that's the only spread we have on here, but I think they're going to win by 2+ touchdowns for sure. They play against UL Monroe. Easy win there. Wisconsin, again, Wisconsin is a team for sure, is a Power 4 team, but I think they're going to roll over them as well. Then they play Georgia. This is going to be a very tough game, Alabama, Georgia. Georgia did a lot on the transfer portal as well. We haven't really talked about them as much yet, and this game is at Georgia. This is going to be a very pivotal game. See where that goes. They play Vanderbilt. I think this is going to be a game where Alabama blows the doors off Vanderbilt. After everything last year, after all Diego Pavia has talked about, I don't think this game is going to be close. Alabama, Missouri. Missouri might be a little better this year with Bo Prabula, but I expect Alabama to win this game. That's a game they can't lose. They play Tennessee again. I expect Tennessee to be worse than last year. Not only did they lose people to the NFL draft, losing Nico Iamaleava at the worst time. Again, I agree with their decision to let him go. I thought what he was doing was wrong. But now you have Joey Aguilar. Again, you got a lot worse at the quarterback position. I think Alabama is going to roll through them. South Carolina is going to be better this year. They play at South Carolina. I think that's going to be a very tight game. And then they play back-to-back weeks. They play against LSU. They got to win at least one of those two in those stretches. LSU is going to be a really good team. I think LSU is a better team than Alabama this year, which is crazy. I think the odd makers have Alabama as a better team to win the SEC. They play Oklahoma. Oklahoma should be better this year. John Mateer should be one of the best players in the country. But it's going to be very interesting to see for this Oklahoma team how they round it out around John Mateer. They play Eastern Illinois, which should be an easy win. Then they play Auburn, which is one of the most improved teams in the country. I get it. Alabama is a lot more talented. Auburn gets up for this game. It's at Auburn. That's going to be a tough game. Now, they can only afford 2 losses. Like I said, when you look at Alabama playing Georgia and LSU, like, you got to at least take one of those 2, and then you only could afford 1 loss on the schedule. The schedule is still pretty tough in the SEC, but again, Alabama's going to be favored for even most of those tough games. They got to figure it out. Kalen DeBoer is definitely on the hot seat. He can't afford missing the college football playoffs 2 years, but again, like I said, these big programs in the SEC, it's starting to even out a little more. Alabama isn't that big dog that gets everybody now with NIL opportunities. People aren't just going to Alabama like they used to. So, yeah, definitely is going to be interesting for Alabama. But I said it. I really like this team. I really think this team suits Kalen DeBoer as a coach a lot more than last year. But, again, that wraps up this Alabama preview. Now, again, like I said, we go over these little preview type episodes, but coming into next month, expect a lot coming up to the college football season. When you talk about conference previews, award previews, we're going to hit everything next month. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and